9 atrocities of Hebron. We're going to speak about Sephardi Jewish life in Hebron, what it was like all those years here on this special edition today, and I think it'll be interesting to explore. Hopefully on this channel at one stage we will be able to visit the holy city and take various different let's just say pictures and go to other places, Marat Machpelah, Kiryat Arba, hopefully at one stage in time. But there's an excellent article that was, I think, written many years ago on Arad Sheva, Israel National News, I think possibly about 22 and a half years ago. S. Al-Fassi is the author. I'm not too sure the first name in full, not too sure the entire titles, but obviously Hebron is very much like Jerusalem, had a sparse number of Jews living there in earlier time periods. I think Maimonides he writes in his preface over here, when he was 31 years of age, and on the first day of the week, the 9th day of the month, I left Jerusalem for Hebron to kiss the graves of my forefathers in the cave of Machpelah, Marat Machpelah, respectively, over here. So the article actually starts over there. Our father Abraham selected Hebron as the first home for the Jewish people to settle in the land of Israel. There, Abraham purchased the historic cave of Machpelah, other than Jerusalem. Also, obviously, there's also Jerusalem is the capital of Hebron is indeed the holiest location for the Jewish people. The city is mentioned in the Torah 70 times. For example, Abraham moved his tent and came and lived in the plains of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and built there an altar to Hashem, to the Lord, over here. Hebron is a place where Sarah died and was also buried. That was the place where she was done. Hebron was King David's first capital. Even before Jerusalem, Jewish archaeologists in Hebron have uncovered pottery, jewelry, and ancient homes from the time period of Abraham and Sarah. Unfortunately, Hebron, like all the other land of Israel, has been under foreign occupation for 2,000 years. Even so, there has always been a small number of Jews living in, let's say, the holy city itself. Okay. Now, through the long years of exile from Eretz Israel, we said Hebron, like Jerusalem, generally had a sparse number of Jews living there. I think it was in 1166, he quotes that Maimonides, as we said before, was only 31 years of age. He wrote that on the first day of the week, the 9th day of the month of Cheshvan, he left Jerusalem to kiss the graves of the Avot at the cave of Machpelah, Marat Machpelah, and he says, I stood in the cave and I praised be God for everything. That's what's quoted over here. Now, during the Turkish rule time, which lasted from the 16th century until only at that time when the article was written 90 years ago, now it's obviously been about more than 110 years, Jews from all over the Ottoman Empire migrated to the holy city of Hebron. Reported over as early as 1333, there was a rabbi named Rabbi Isaac Hillel of Greece, mentioned that Jews of Hebron reporting that they were working in the cotton trade and in glassworks also. Now, come on, I think it was the year 1917. The Ottoman Turks, at that point in time, they took total control of the land of Israel, and with them came unfortunately, slaughter of the Jews of Hebron. A certain Menachem ben Moshe Babli, author of the Sefer Tamei HaMitzvot, I think he wrote about it at that point in time. He immigrated from Ottoman Baghdad and became one of the first pioneers to settle in Hebron after the Spanish expulsion in the year 1492. It was very highly, let's just say, documented over this specific incident was over there, and maybe we'll speak about it at a later time. Now, I believe, I'm just continuing over here, many of the Spanish Jews from western part of Ottoman Empire, they came to Hebron with Rabbi Malkiel Ashkenazi. It is noted, I think, a resettlement of the Jews of Hebron in the year 1540. The influx, let's just say, of Iberian Jews in the 16th century raised the Jewish population of Hebron to a point higher than it had been since the Roman times. I think nearly 1,500 years prior to it at that stage in time. That was upon making Aliyah, the great 15th century Sephardic rabbi, Rabbi Ovadia Bar Tenora of Italy, wrote, over the cave of Machpelah is a large building of the Ishmaelites who regard the sacred site with fear and awe. No person, Jewish or Ishmaelite, is allowed to descend to the cave, and there is allowed to descend, and there is a small window in the outer wall of the building which is above the grave of Abraham, and there the Jews over there are allowed to pray. And Hebron, like lived 20 Jewish families at that point in time, all of them great rabbi scholars, some of them descendants of the Moranos, who came to find refuge under the wings of the divine presence. I live in Hebron for many months. This was quoted over. And much more can be said within regards to that. Now, friends, anyone coming in, a special edition here today where we're exploring more of the Sephardic Jewish life of the holy city of Hebron in Israel. And it's like a part two, let's just say this is. And Jews not only migrated to Hebron, but Hebron's Jews ventured away to other communities for the purpose of raising funds and teaching. I think from Barbados to Bulgaria and London to Morocco. They traversed the, let's say, dangerous highways and treacherous seas as emissaries for their community. More than 2 centuries ago, Abraham Ruvio went abroad, let's say, to raise funds for printing books of his father Mordechai had written. Abraham's father was the head of the rabbinical court of Hebron in the 18th century. Now, Rav Mordechai had a written religious manuscript that was eventually published, I think, in Livorno in the year 1793, and another printed in Saloniki over 40 years later. Now, there was another one. Rabbi Abraham Haim of Hebron was born in Morocco, in Fez. He was an emissary of Hebron, and he traveled from community to community. He raised a lot of charitable funds for the Talmud Torah at Hebron at that point in time. Sadly, while traveling on the most honorable mission in monastery, Abraham had died. That's what's reported over. Then also from the Balkans, this was came another famous rabbi, Rabbi Moshe ben Avram Ferreira of Sarajevo. He happened to be. He traveled to Eretz Yisrael, I think, in the year 1893, and became the head of the rabbinical court at Hebron. He died 4 decades later, in the year 1864. Even though both Smyrna, Izmir, and Hebron were both considered part of the Sultan's empire, Smyrna could not compare to the holiness of Eretz Yisrael, obviously, for the spiritual Jewish person. For this reason, the Sephardim immigrated from one location of Ottoman Empire to another, from the freezing mountains of Macedonia to the hot deserts of Syria, and from the Mediterranean islands of Greece to the Golden Horn of Constantinople. They came. One notable was Rabbi Yosef Raphael ben Chaim Yosef Chazan. Now, interesting, he had relocated from Smyrna to Hebron. He later became the chief rabbi of Jerusalem. Now, in 1858, Rabbi Eliyahu ben Silman Mani, who we're going to speak about towards the end of this class, they traveled from Ottoman Baghdad to Hebron and was elected the chief rabbi of the city. He remained as chief rabbi for 40 years, passing away. I think he was about 75 years of age. We're going to speak about him towards a later part of this video. Okay. Obviously, Hebron has been considered such a holy location that Jews would make the treacherous journey there, not just live, but even to die. From across land and sea on foot, with beasts over there, Jews would journey to settle in Hebron and live out their remaining years. Historic literature demonstrates Jews emigrating from Balkans, Thrace and Anatolia. Rabbi Yehuda Havilo, the chief rabbi of Alexandria, emigrated north across the desert of Hebron for just this reason. Now, the chief rabbi and rabbinical judge, now the famous rabbi, Rabbi Yosef Finzi of Belgrade, emigrated to the sacred soul of Hebron when he was elderly. Now, for centuries, Jews have migrated to Holy Land, if for no other reason, to fulfill the mitzvah of burial over there. That was one of the important reasons to go in older days at that point in time. Okay. But at the same time, Hebron was not a wealthy city. Throughout its time of the Turkish occupation, the 1839 census notes Jews employed as silversmiths, clerks, bakers, slaughterers, but most of all professional Torah scholars. 1879, Rabbi Chaim Yisrael Romano of Constantinople constructed a large and elaborate home known as a Beit Romano. The home functioned as a domicile for visiting Turkish Sephardim. The building included a synagogue called the Istanbuli Synagogue. Today, Beit Romano is a yeshiva for young men of Hebron, though it is threatened by Arabs, unfortunately, on a daily basis. We see that all throughout Jewish history, there was a lot of anti-Semitism, and very much see that over here in Hebron for a long time period. Jews have unfortunately suffered from this over there, which we have to point out. Okay, let's continue. However, also we have to point out, so we talked about that. Prior to 1929, obviously the massacre, the horrendous massacre that occurred there, Hebron possessed 4 Sephardic Talmud Torahs. I think there were 3 mutual aid societies and 3 dispensary for medicines. And the Sephardic community was administered by the chief rabbi and a council of 7 members. We know August 23rd, 1929, Arabs, under direction of their Islamic religious leaders, attacked the Jews with axes, knives and other weapons. They not only murdered the Jews, but they utilized ghastly methods of torture, including, unfortunately, rape, castration and amputations. They assailed Jews throughout the Holy Land, from Tzfat to Hebron. Scores of Jews, both Ashkenazim and Sephardim, were murdered during this rampage. In Hebron, the Islamic murderers killed Chacham Hanoch Hasson, a really great rabbi of his time. He was a chief Sephardic rabbi, and his entire family. I think prominent Rabbi Yosef Castell locked himself in the room, but Arabs broke in, murdering him and his family, and then set out and to put his home ablaze at that stage in time. The last Sephardic rabbi in Hebron, subsequent to 1929 pogroms, was Rabbi Meir Franco, who had lost his son-in-law in a murderous frenzy over there. So we see the horrors of it. We did a video on Tisha B'Av recounting just a few of the informations we could get within regards to that horrific day, and much more can be said about that. Now I believe Hebron was liberated in 1967 from Arab occupation, and today has more than 750 proud Jews, Sephardi Jews, Ashkenazi Jews. However, as many of us know, daily attacks and murders are again the norm, not the exception. Not only are these courageous Jews constantly on the defense from Arabs, but they continue to defend themselves from international media. Obviously, we see at the moment, since 7th of October, all the horrors you see in the international media, which attempts to make them look like criminals. Hebron and all of the Holy Land was stolen from the Jews by the savage Romans, occupied by Christian armies, and more than once occupied by various power-hungry Islamic regimes. Today, the Jews of Hebron face not only gunfire and bombings, but political attacks aimed to removing the city from sovereignty of the State of Israel. I think this was written 20 years ago. Both the United States and European Union have officially decided that Hebron, as well as other communities in Judaism and Samaria, should be turned, I think, I'll just finish over here. They were should be turned over to the Arabs and made part of a new country, Palestine, next year. Remember, this article was written 22 years ago, so we're talking from a long time ago, but God forbid this will actually happen. The Jewish people liberated the city of Hebron by the grace of God. And at that point in time, when the article was originally written in 2003, it was 30 years ago then, but obviously now it's much longer. But now we are 5 decades later. The international community has fallen for the Arab propaganda that Hebron belonged to some mythical country of Palestine. The world now seeks to take it away from the Jews and give it to Arabs. At that point in time, the head was Arafat. Said and he quoted before this article 2 years ago, "Are there no stones left in Hebron? Where are the stones and where are the mobs? Prepare yourselves for a struggle if the Israelis do not retreat from Hebron." That's what the incitement he actually gave at that point in time. The article continues, "There are some Jews who, for reasons only known to themselves, cannot appreciate the Torah, and because of this cannot understand the emotional attachment and the legal right to Jews to thrive in our homeland, including our holy city of Hebron. These Jews wish to give away Judaism's holiest locations to Arabs, who have sworn to murder the Jews, basically. The bizarre rationale of liberal Jews thinking is that if we give them land, they will stop killing us and we shall have peace. However, multiple times, Arabs have stated that their purpose is to liberate all of Palestine. In clear speech, this means they plan to exterminate all of the Jews and take our land. The Palestinian Authority, and speaking to its people, sums up its goals perfectly clear. You are the generation that will reach the sea and hoist the flag of Palestine over Tel Aviv. That's what they say. Now, I think with someone named S. Al-Fassi, and Israeli, it's quotes over here at the end, he was, maybe he still is, a vice president of the Foundation for the Advancement of Sephardic Studies and Culture. I think he was based in Florida, South Florida, at the time he wrote this specific article over here. So we're going to try and find out more information about the history of Hebron over here in this special edition over here. When a special edition exploring Sephardi life in Hebron. Now we know in the 16th century, under Ottoman rule, I think Jews from Spain established a community in Hebron and built the Avram Avinu synagogue. In the 19th century, the community expanded to include Ashkenazi Jews. Also, they came. In the summer of 1929, local Muslims carried out a massacre of the Jews of Hebron. The survivors were initially evacuated by British Mandate forces, then later allowed back. With the outbreak of Arab revolt in 1936, the last Jews were evacuated from the city by the British second time, with only one family remaining. Shortly after, it was the Six-Day War, 1967. Jewish settlement was renewed, along with the establishment of Kiryat Arba nearby. The presence of a Jewish neighborhood in Hebron was explicitly set out in the Hebron Accord, jointly signed by Israel and Palestinians. At present, this is the only Jewish community located inside, let's just say, a city that some of the Palestinians might also say it's their city. Today, some 1,100 Jews live in Hebron, including 350 students of Yeshivat Shavei Hebron. And it's under Israeli control, I believe. But I think at part of Hebron, as many as 40,000 Palestinians live in the H2 area and 215,000 H1 area, which is where the Palestinians will be much more, be the large majority of Hebron in that place in time. Okay, let's continue the article. Let's get a bit of the biblical history of Hebron also. Now, Abraham, as we know, lived in Hebron. He purchased the cave of the Marat Machpelah, as we spoke about before. He bought it from Hebron the Hittite. Abraham buried his wife Sarah over there, obviously Yitzhak and Rivka. Yaakov and Leah was buried there also. Adam and Chava was also buried there. After the exodus from Egypt, the 12 spies arrived in Hebron, where Ahiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, and Anakim the giants lived at the time. The city was conquered by Joshua during the battle against the 5 Amorite kings of the south. The king of Hebron was Hoham. The biblical narrative states that the city was completely destroyed, leaving no living soul. As was part of the inheritance of the tribe of Judah, Hebron was awarded to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, Caleb ben Yefuna, as we say. However, being one of the Levites, one of the Levite cities of refuge, it was shared by Caleb and the priests who won the city by lots. David was anointed king and established his first capital in Hebron. He reigned for 7 years until the conquest of Jerusalem from the Jebusites, at which point Jerusalem was declared the capital of Israel. The importance of Hebron during the kingdom of Judah is evidenced from the clay jar handles followed there, stamped with "For the King" and Hebron. These seals date back to the reign of Hezekiah, king of Judah, in the 8th and 9th century before Common Era. Over 1,200 jar handles with a royal seal regarding "For the King" were discovered. It's believed the jars contain oil and wine for royal use. Now, according to the book of Kings, it is Shishak, the first king of Egypt, conquered Jerusalem in 926 BCE. And there was an inscription found in Karnak, Egypt, lists among the cities he conquered, Field of Abraham, possibly referring to Hebron. Let's speak a little bit with regards to the second Bet HaMikdash time period. When Jewish exiles from Babylon returned to the land of Israel with Ezra and Nehemiah, settlement of Hebron and surroundings were renewed. Inhabitants of the city were among those asked to send 1 in 10 to Jerusalem to assist in its rehabilitation. However, it is assumed that the Edomites migrated to the southern part of Mount Hebron, which was empty of Jews, perhaps due to the pressure of Nabatean tribes on the ancient land east of the Jordan. The Edomites also took control of most of the area up to Bet Zur, let's just say, in of itself. So that's another interesting thing. I think in 664 before Common Era, Hebron was conquered by Judah Maccabeus, who destroyed the city and its fortifications. In 112 BCE, the Hasmonean prince John Hyrcanus I waged war against the Edomites were given the choice of expulsion or conversion. Thus, Hebron became a Jewish city with a population that included former Edomites during the Great Jewish Revolt against the Romans, 66-70 Common Era. One of the rebel leaders, Simon Bar Gira, established an alliance with a former Edomite leader, and the area was handed over to him. However, it was conquered soon after and burned down by the Romans. Many Jewish captives were sold into slavery in the Hebron marketplace. After the Great Revolt, Hebron became a small town known as Abrimion, I believe. And then there's much more history within regards to it. We're going to go down to a bit more modern history route. I think in the 1852, we're skipping many, many years. Maybe we shouldn't have, but just talking about this famous Rabbi Dr. Yehuda Bibas. And it's one of the early forerunners of Zionism. He settled in Hebron and established a Talmudic study hall, Beit Midrash, donating his extensive library to the city. In 1854, another great rabbi who we'll speak about in a few minutes, Rabbi Eliyahu Mani, was appointed the chief rabbi of the Hebron community. He was active in building synagogues and fundraising. By this time, the Jewish quarter was a community, a gated community. Around 1889, a Chabad yeshiva, Magen Avot, was established by Rabbi Shimon Menashe Chaikin and his student Rabbi Shlomo Yehuda Leib Elazarov. The institution consisted of a high yeshiva and a Talmud Torah for children also. By the year 1895, Hebron was growing rapidly. I think 1,429 people, 810 Sephardim, 619 Ashkenazim. After World War I, the number dropped only to 430. And in 1901, Rabbi Chaim Hesky Medini was appointed the chief rabbi of Hebron, a position he held until his death. Rabbi Medini would open a yeshiva in Beit Romano and completed the writing of a large Talmudic encyclopedia called the Sdei Chemed. In other words, come what the year 1907, the city developed economically and the Zionistic organization became active. The Eretz Yisrael Workers Association, Poalei Zion, established its fourth branch in Hebron. In 1911, the Chabad Yeshiva Torat Emet was founded there. Blueprints were drawn up to build housing and a hotel, but the plan never materialized. Come on, July 1914, the Jewish population numbered as many as 1,500. When World War I erupted, the Ottomans expelled many Hebron Jews with foreign citizenship, and Torat Emet Yeshiva closed down. Those who remained faced conscription to the Ottoman army at that point in time. Let's speak about the British Mandate period. In December 1917, Hebron was captured by the British. In the summer of 1924, 10 students from Slobodka Yeshiva in Jerusalem established another branch of the yeshiva in Hebron, headed by Rabbi Zarna. Now there was a Zionistic leader, Menachem Usishkin, who was a supporter of the yeshiva with an eye to strengthening Jewish settlement in Hebron. By the summer of 1925, enrollment was up to 120 people. The yeshiva attracted Jewish newcomers to the city and served as an important source of income for the local Arabs, from which students rented apartments and purchased goods. Friendly relations developed between the Jews and Arabs who invited each other to celebrations. Now, in 1927, Ashkenazi and Sephardic communities formed a general committee with a united Hebrew community in Hebron. Rabbi Meir Shmuel Kashmir and Rabbi Yaakov Yosef Slonim served as chairman. And I think in 1927 it was, Ben Tzvi documented an entire street in Hebron inhabited by Muslims who were thought to be of Jewish ancestry, forced to convert to Islam against their will. Let's say several generations earlier, possibly around 150 years prior. They were known as the Al-Muqtasibin, meaning those who gave their law to heaven. They continued to use their name in the signatures. The same family was also mentioned by Rabbi Eliyahu Yeshua Levanon, who wrote in 1917 that the Mutsabin came from Istanbul and converted to Islam 150 years earlier. He estimated their number to be around 300 people. In another book, Levanon actually recounts an Arab driver from the same family, Al-Mutasib Bila. He adds that despite being considered one of the Anusim, he is one of the last Arabs educated among Jews, allowing him to recite the Shema Yisrael prayer, Manishtana from memory, as well as sing Hatikva over there. We spoke about the Hebron massacre in the separate class that we gave over. I think it was on August 24th, 1959. Arabs from Hebron attacked and murdered 59 of their Jewish neighbors, with 8 more dying later of their injuries. 44 were severely injured, and 21 had lighter injuries. The victims were buried in 4 rows of the Hebron's ancient Jewish cemetery. A separate grave was dug for severed limbs. soil, blood-soaked clothes, and items from the Jewish homes. These days after the massacre, the British authorities ordered all Jews to leave Hebron. Knesset Israel, known as Hebron Yeshiva, was moved to Jerusalem. Jewish properties and homes were looted by rioters at that point in time. And it's actually interesting. Rabbi Eliyahu Yeshua Levanon documented in 1937 various customs prevalent within the ancient Jewish community of Hebron, including that Sephardic Jews demonstrating an impressive familiarity with Tehillim Psalms, reciting them from memory with precision. That was one of them. Observations of Babylonian Jews, reciting portions of Tehillim, chapter number 19, as they made their way to the synagogue courtyard for Kiddush Lebana. Another tradition was that among Jews to avoid Eshel Abraham, potentially due to its pagan associations or its historical connection to the sales of Jews into slavery. Another one, there was an anecdote noting the synagogue shamash's attendant habit of expressing joyous laughter following the Havdalah ceremony, symbolizing wishes for a prosperous and joyful week ahead. With regards to Zionistic activism, we spoke about it. We spoke about especially Rabbi Dr. Yehuda Bibas. I think between 1839 to 1940, Rabbi Bibas actually was a rabbi that would go to various different Jewish communities, especially in Europe, inspired by Serbian and Greek revolts against the Ottoman Turks. Rabbi Bibas advocated a mass repatriation of Jews to Israel, and I think he met Rabbi Yehuda Alkali, another forerunner of Zionism, and became Rabbi Alkali's mentor. Rabbi Alkali went on himself to become influential proto-Zionist himself. Now it's interesting, Rabbi Dr. Yehuda Bibas, I think in 1852, 1 year after his wife passed away, Rabbi Bibas made Aliyah and was welcomed by his students in Jaffa. Later, he actually moved on to the holy city of Hebron. He established a seminary over there. He built his extensive library. He died 2 months after his arrival and was buried in the old Jewish cemetery in Hebron. Let's speak a few words with regards to Rabbi Mani. Many would know that there's many memorials within regards. He was a chief rabbi of Hebron between the years 1858 to 1899. The great rabbi was. So he was actually an associate of Rabbi Chaim of Baghdad, the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai himself lived between 1833 to 1909. With the blessings of the Ben Ish Chai, Rabbi Eliyahu Mani decided to go and live in Israel. He lived, settled in Hebron, and served as head rabbi of the Jewish community. He was already married upon arriving in Israel, and his 3 children were born in Israel. Rabbi Eliyahu Mani was so accepted and admired by the Arabs that they called him the Sheikh. When he died, the Jews buried him in the Jewish cemetery, but the Arabs wanted him to be buried near them. So they stole the body and buried it in the Muslim cemetery. The Jews had to snatch the body back and stand guard over the grave. It's actually interesting. I think after his death, a manuscript of one of his books was found stating the following: I have accepted upon myself not to question the writings of the Divrei Shalom because of what happened to me. What led to this statement is the following incident. Once, this is a story about Rabbi Eliyahu Mani. Once Rabbi Eliyahu Mani sat and learned the text of the Divrei Shalom with his colleague Rabbi Nissim Ini, I think his name is. They discussed the interpretation of a difficult Kabbalistic issue that his grandfather, the Rashash, Rabbi Shalom Sharabi, addressed. After reading Divrei Shalom's understanding of the issue, Rabbi Mani proclaimed this was not the Rashash's meaning. Rabbi Mani, with his great knowledge, was able to show the true meaning of the Rashash, Rabbi Shalom Sharabi's work. Immediately after saying these words, Rabbi Mani became mute. So it's reported about. I'm using the Daily Zohar website, which commemorates the Hilula of rabbis, the Yatzat of rabbis. So he became mute. He began to cry and forwarded the words of the vidui with his lips. Soon afterwards, he regained his power of speech. Rabbi Mani explained that while he was mute, he had a vision of the Rashash who said, "What right do you have to say that my grandson didn't understand me? You are the one who misunderstood the great words of my grandson." Only after Rabbi Mani further asked for forgiveness did he become healed. Now, he was a great rabbi. He was the chief rabbi of Hebron of his time. So I hope you all gained clarity over here. Now, friends, this is a special edition. We explored the Jewish life, the Sephardi life of the holy city of Hebron on this special edition over here. Please, everyone, subscribe to the channel. We are nearing a staggering, at the moment, 7,000 subscribers. If anyone is interested in watching any of these videos, please share these videos also to other people. On that note, wishing you all a good day, and thanks for watching.